For a long stretch of time, overly themed sets and giant custom stages were part of how World Wrestling Entertainment sold spectacle. They made shows feel larger, stranger, and more event-like before a match even began. The giant SmackDown fist, the industrial-looking Raw stages, and the huge custom pay-per-view sets all told the audience that this was not just another television taping. It was a world with its own architecture. The stage itself was part of the brand. World Wrestling Entertainment's own retrospective on Raw's stage history describes the years after the Monday Night War as a period when extravagance was the name of the game, and specifically points to the complete overhaul of the Raw and SmackDown Titantrons in the early 2000s, including the famous SmackDown fist. That is exactly why the change feels so noticeable in hindsight. Those old sets did more than look impressive. They gave each show a stronger identity. Raw felt different from SmackDown before the first promo ever started. A pay-per-view could feel unique simply because the set looked like something built for one night only. In an era when wrestling presentation leaned heavily on visual excess, those giant custom stages helped create anticipation. They made television feel like an attraction. But that same style of presentation also came with limits. The clearest turning point came when the company moved into high-definition production in 2008. According to World Wrestling Entertainment's own set history coverage, Raw and SmackDown shifted to a universal Titantron model built around HD screens and LED integration, with the screen structure becoming an extension of each superstar's entrance. That is a major clue to why the older set philosophy started to fade. Once the company could use large-scale digital screens, lighting grids, and programmable visuals, it no longer needed enormous fixed structures to create a sense of scale. The stage could change by software, not just by construction. That production shift is the first big reason the company moved away from overly themed sets. Digital staging is more flexible. A giant fist or a giant industrial scaffold gives a show a lot of personality, but it locks the production into one physical design. A wall of LED screens can be reskinned for different wrestlers, different matches, different brands, and different premium live events much more easily. From a technical standpoint, that is a powerful advantage. It allows the company to present a cleaner, more adaptable show without rebuilding everything from the ground up every time the presentation changes. This is an inference based on the company's documented move to universal HD screen-based staging. The second reason is consistency. Themed sets were memorable, but they were also tied to an older era when the company was more comfortable making each show feel like its own physical universe. Over time, World Wrestling Entertainment moved toward a more unified visual language. Bigger brand logos, cleaner lines, large LED walls, and reusable stage frameworks made the entire product look more standardized. That may sound less exciting on paper, but it also made the company's presentation more polished and easier to manage across television, touring, and international events. The same corporate reporting that discusses the company's modern live event business also emphasizes higher production-related costs tied to large-scale events and premium live events, which helps explain why flexibility and scalability would matter more over time. That leads to the third reason: cost and logistics. A heavily themed set can be visually powerful, but it is also harder to transport, build, modify, and maintain than a more modular LED-based stage system. The more a company tours and the more often it produces major events, the more that efficiency matters. World Wrestling Entertainment's annual reports repeatedly describe the scale of its touring and production operations, and more recent filings explicitly mention higher production-related costs associated with live events and premium live events. That does not prove one giant custom set was eliminated because of one specific budget line, but it strongly supports the broader conclusion that reusable, adaptable staging became more practical than elaborate one-off physical designs, and that practical shift had a real effect on the show. The first effect was on identity. Older sets made individual shows feel more distinct. Raw looked like Raw. SmackDown looked like SmackDown. A custom pay-per-view stage could instantly separate one event from the next. When that approach faded, the company gained visual consistency, but it also lost some of the physical uniqueness that once made its programming feel more varied from week to week. The second effect was on memory. Fans often remember old eras, partly through their sets. The giant SmackDown fist is not just a stage piece, it is an era marker. The same is true of the older industrial raw stages and the elaborate one-night pay-per-view designs. When the company moved toward cleaner LED-heavy staging, the product became more modern, but also somewhat less tied to those big, unforgettable physical symbols. That is one reason older viewers often describe past shows as feeling larger or more special, even when the newer production is technically more advanced. This is an interpretive conclusion based on the company's own celebration of its older stage eras and the documented shift to universal HD staging. The third effect was on the atmosphere. Overly themed sets made wrestling feel more theatrical. The modern style makes it feel sleeker and more brand-driven. Neither approach is automatically wrong. They are doing different jobs. The older sets were about creating a physical world. The newer sets are about flexibility, scale, and screen-based immersion. But for many viewers, what disappeared with the old stage philosophy was a certain kind of visual weirdness, the feeling that every show might have its own giant signature object burned into your memory. So why did World Wrestling Entertainment move away from overly themed sets and giant custom stages? The most responsible answer is this. The company changed course because HD production, LED integration, touring efficiency, and a more unified corporate presentation made modular digital staging more useful than giant fixed structures. The old sets were memorable, but the newer system was more flexible, easier to adapt, and better suited to modern production needs. That conclusion is based on the company's documented set evolution and corporate discussion of production and live event costs. And in the end, that is why fans still miss the old stages. This was not just a cosmetic change, it changed how shows felt. Themed sets once helped define eras, brands, and events in a way that was immediate and physical. The newer style made the product cleaner and more versatile, but it also made the company a little less strange, a little less tactile, and a little less visually distinct from one show to the next.